right, so the operator was complaining about some bad weights on the scale. So we zeroed the scale and needed to do a little bit more investigation. So we brought the screen up top so it's a little easier to work with, and you can do that with the extension cord here. And we began to check the weights like we have on other scales. And nothing looks terribly abnormal. One thing to also keep in mind is the air conditioner blows right on top of this scale in particular. So you'll have a lot of that fluctuation because of air movement. And we came to number 7, and we're displaying this number. And this typically is the standard number for when there's an error or an issue or it's out of range. So we re-zeroed the scale here at the main menu, and we will execute that now. Upon completion, we return to manual, checking our weight, and we went to 7, and we still have the issue. So the next step from here is to calibrate. We've retrieved the calibration weight, the 1 kilogram calibration weight from the QC storage over in the spine. The password is all ones. And once we arrive here, we will select the scale number that we want to calibrate, which is 7. You will see the change here, and we will push enter. And you will recognize this number as displayed, the same in the manual screen. Okay? You'll notice the orange is highlighted here to 0. We need to start the calibration process by getting this orange highlight to move to full, and we do that by pushing enter. It moves to full, and now we put the weight inside the scale. Don't forget to correctly identify the number that you're working with by viewing the number at the bottom of the scale head. Once you have installed the weight, press enter again, and after several seconds of this thinking, it should return to 1,000 grams. It went straight to 0 with the weight, and it's bouncing back and forth now, so we know that there's an issue. This is typically indicative of a bad load cell. And through this troubleshooting process, we've come to that conclusion. The next step from here is to address the load cell. All right, to remove the scale head, it's not unlike the others. We're going to use a couple extensions with a 10mm socket, and I bring a 10mm wrench just in case. It's not often I have to use this. We're going to turn off the power, which is located here. This will allow us to work and not hurt anything. All right, to remove the head, it's these 4 bolts in the corners. And when the head is removed, there's a couple of cables inside that we take off. I will often take a picture as a reference. Before I remove the rest of the cables. You can see we have a ground strap here. We're going to take this back to the shop and perform the rest of the repair on the bench. All right, we have the head unit back in the shop. We've got it gently clamped in this vise right here just to aid with the disassembly. The load cell is right here, and we suspect that it is compromised based off our troubleshooting. We need to remove the bottom bracket that holds the weigh bucket with these two bolts, and we need to remove these two Allen heads so that we can pull this out as a unit. We'll be using a 10mm socket for the bottom bracket, and we will be using a 6mm Allen wrench for these two bolts here. And also, later on, we will need to remove this plate, which is these 4 Phillips heads. We will go to that point. This is the load cell assembly that connects the head to the load cell and the bucket. The bucket is hanging from the bracket that hangs here, like so. And this aluminum piece here is the actual load cell right here. And you can see there's an indicating arrow right here engraved on the aluminum, indicating which is the downward force. And oftentimes this load cell will go bad due to some trauma sustained, perhaps somebody bumped a bucket. Under quick observation here, I can see already this point right here is not lined up in parallel, and it's difficult to see on the phone here, but this is not straight. That would indicate there's been a shift, and perhaps the aluminum part is now bent. We'll do a little bit more inspecting to see if we can get right to the bottom of it, but this is the piece in question. We're going to take this out and show you how this functions with the new one that we have here off to the side. You can see in this view that this head is not straight. It is a bent load cell. These load cells are soldered in onto this board here, and so we will need to loosen these screws, use our solder gun, and remove all the little bit of solder here, and resolder in the new load cell. Okay, we've test fit the new load cell inside the bracket here. It's important as you tighten the two sets of bolts, the top and bottom, that you do not apply any torque on the load cell. So you need to clamp the top here just to secure it before you tighten the bolts. That will allow you to independently tighten the bolts to the block on the load cell without applying any torque to the load cell itself. And then you will rotate and do the same action on this end. Once again, tightening. Now, when you install the load cell, you can see it's straight now as opposed to the others. The other we just removed. And along with it being straight, you can help keep it straight by using the index points that are in the bottoms of these brackets, these two end brackets. There's actually an index corner on the inside that you can put the load cell into and apply a little bit of torque, and they will stay in position. Okay, we have the load cell on this side and this plate on this side. Now it's important to note this bracket has this notch cut in it where we have this piece of sheet metal bolted in. Now we need to make sure there's clearance and that the bracket is not touching this block here, and you can do that with a piece of paper and fill in and out. The purpose of this is to reduce the amount of sag the load cell will withstand. If it's overweight, this is a physical stop to prevent the load cell from breaking off entirely or overextending. You just need enough to clear that, which we do. Okay, the next step is we're going to reassemble everything and then move on to soldering the wires. And we can carefully put this load cell back in the head like this. Okay, now that we have this assembly back in the head, the last thing we need to do is solder the new wires in right here. Be sure to keep track of the colors and what position they are in. We will then return the cap to this, reinstall the bracket on the bottom, and then reinstall the head onto the scale.